Well, we got 6 chapters that we looked at for today's lesson. And they dialed in on Gideon, of course. Like last week, they dialed in on Deborah. Slipped my mind. A lot happens in a week. I forget about last week. I don't know how much we will get involved in any of those people particularly. I just like to look at the chapters. At least, look through them, look at them, try to remember whatever. Give them all a little bit of our attention. Because I think the whole word, every jot and tittle of it is important. Y'all know what a jot and tittle is? In the Old Testament, you don't. I don't know if y'all don't read Hebrew. I don't either. But when you're reading through it, you see them little dots here, there, and yonder in different places. Those are jots and tittles. Those are very important, depending on where they are. And I like to read the whole thing. So a man of God took time to write it all. I think it all took a little time to read it all. We can't read it all. We don't have time. I sure can't preach it all. We don't have time, but we can look at the highlights of it. I know that's a little bit different than what a lot of Sunday school teachers do. I've enjoyed some Sunday school classes where the teacher didn't he used the text and he maybe read the quarterlies and all that, but he didn't preach or read through them or teach through them pretty good. And I've also been to Sunday school classes where the guy would go through the book, Brother Ike was good at that, going through the book. Either way, I enjoy it. But I hope y'all don't mind us not reading word for word through the book. I will get stagnant in my presentation if I did that, and I don't want to do that. Not that they're terrible. There are some very good writers in our work, and of these commentaries and of the quarterlies. They're real good writers. I've never been a writer. I'm a reader. I'm a reader, not a writer. I remember years ago, back before I was preaching, and years ago when I was a kid, Sunday school lesson, all I would read was the book, the quarterly. And I would study the quarterly pretty good. Throw 6 chapters at me when I was young, I wouldn't read all 6 chapters of the Bible, of that text. I would just read the quarterly. But nowadays I find myself reading the texts. Place a lot of value on the texts. Place a lot of value on what the writers write too. They're good. I trust them. And I have learned that if I don't quite agree or don't quite understand what they're maybe getting at, it's because it's hard to write a full thought on something rather than to talk about it. If you had questions about something, like anything in a book, you could probably find that guy and go talk to him and ask him about it, and he'd explain it to you, and you'd be like, oh, I see what you're talking about now. But read the quarterlies. They're good. God takes time to write those. Y'all know that's what Brother Ike used to do, is edit those. He was an editor. That takes a different sort of mentality, but he was good at that. But anyway, I just got one page here, and I got about 6 chapters worth of comments right here. Not much. I'm not going to take a long time because y'all know I don't feel good, and I start running out of gas pretty quick. But y'all know who Gideon was? Y'all remember reading about him? I highly disappointed. I don't read commentaries as much as I used to. but I still like to read commentaries on them or even listen to a good commentator on a particular subject. And I got to tell you, and I give credit to the guys that wrote in our literature, they get hard on some of these guys. Gideon, call them names, I just wouldn't do it. Gideon was a coward. They all seem to agree on that. A lot of the commentators, but I don't see it that way. When God approaches a man through, and I think that God approached Gideon as a man and said what he said. God sees everything. He knows the front to the back. He knows the beginning to the end and everything in between. He knows. So, well, let's just read a little bit of chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. We're going to notice some Midianite trouble. They had troubles with their main foes for a lot of years was Canaanites. In the end of Israel's troubles of Judges, it was Philistines. But here we're going to have trouble with Midianites. Now, when you think of Midianites, does anybody come to your attention based on our studies of Moses and when you think Midianites? When Moses left Egypt after he murdered that man, where'd he go? He went to the land of Midian. And he married a girl. And her father was a what? Priest of Midian. He married a Midianite girl. Her father Jethro, which was a great influence on Moses and on the children of Israel in the beginnings, remember, back when they first came out of Egypt. But that's the Midianites that Gideon's going to be dealing with. Later on, Moses, I don't know what happened to her, that Midianite girl, the daughter of Jethro. Bible don't say, but we do find him married later on to an Ethiopian woman. Remember that? And that caused trouble in the camp. I don't know what happened to Midianite woman. I don't know what happened with all that. But here, the Midianites were causing great grief in the children of Israel's lives. Great grief. And verse 1 of chapter 6, Judges chapter 6, verse 1, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Midianites. That's the Midianites we're talking about. 7 years. So, did Israel have a Midianite problem? Or did they have a disobedience problem? Huh? We look around and we can blame McDonald's for our obesity. But whose fault is it? Does somebody twist your arm when you pull up there to that speaker to order and make you order all that, or Sonic, or any of the, does somebody make you order? Do we have a Sonic problem? Look at me. Do I have a Sonic problem? Do I have a McDonald's problem? What do I have a problem with? I have a problem with overeating and eating too much of the wrong things. I don't have a Sonic problem. I have what they call, like everybody else, a sin problem. And you know who has a sin problem? I'm glad to hear you say that. But there are people in our world that don't think they have a sin problem. Christians, preachers who preach out of people who preach out of the same Bible we do. They don't think they have a sin problem. They've arrived. I'm not a sinner anymore because God got that out of me. No. Ain't but one way that's getting out of you, and that is death. The grave will separate that sin problem from you. So never think that Israel had a Midianite problem. Although they did, but their problem was not the Midianites. Their problem was disobedience. You know, remember what we said at a period of 330 years of judges. Taking care of Israel when Israel would have their problem of disobedience. God would send in, what does it say here? The Midianites. God delivered them into the hands of the Midianites. You know, I hear people, and I do it myself, complain about our country and the way it's going and our leadership. Maybe we get the leadership we deserve. You ever thought about that? Maybe we've got the leadership we deserve. Well, I don't deserve that. Okay. Maybe America gets the. All right, I'll give you that. If you want to believe that, that's okay. But maybe America deserves the leadership we get. What did Paul say? He prays for the leaders of the world. There are no leaders that God doesn't ordain. God doesn't cause to have. You get the leaders you deserve. Yeah, but I don't deserve that. All right, go over there with that bunch. Y'all go over there and start your church, and they do. But we get the leadership we deserve. Am I right? And the hand of the Midianites prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them dens which are in the mountains, and caves, and strongholds. A good read on the Midianites would be Numbers 22 through 31, them chapters. See the contrast between, God put a whipping on the Midianites early in Moses' days. Through Moses, put a terrible whooping on the Mennonites. Excuse me. Lord, is there any Mennonites in here? I did not mean to say Mennonite. Midianites. Through Moses. That's a good read. If God, through Moses, wiped out the Midianites, just because he can and because God could. What do you think Israel's problem was? Was their problem a Midianite problem? Doesn't that prove what I'm talking about right there? They did not have a Midianite problem. They had a disobedience problem, right? Because we see through Moses that God could take care of the Midianites, and he had. I have it written down here. What was Israel's problem? A, Midianites, or B, Israel's disobedience? That would be a B, huh? Read a little further. Let's go to verse 11. And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite. And his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Do you know why that he was hiding from the Midianites? If you go back and read, the Midianites would allow Israel to grow their food, grow their crops, wean their calves, wean their sheep, all that, do all the work, then come in and do what? Take it all. So here he was hiding, threshing wheat by a wine press. And this is something interesting I learned. Wine presses were generally down in valleys low. And wheat threshing always took place high on mountains where the wind blew. So instead of him being up on a mountain threshing wheat for the wind, they'd throw the wheat up in the air and the wind would come and blow the chaff and the wheat would fall back down. They generally did that in high places. But we find Gideon down at the wine press where they stomp the wine doing that very same thing. So he was trying to avoid letting the Midianites know where he was threshing wheat. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of honor. Now, most of your valor, what'd I say? I meant valor. Not honor, valor, two very different words. Now, what did we say about God? He knows what you are. He has seen you from the beginning to the end. And when he says, Thou mighty man of valor, you know what Gideon was? You read the whole story, he was that. Well, he was a coward hiding down in the wine press, threshing wheat so the Midianites, wouldn't find him. He's a coward. No, he was just doing what people did. He was under the thumb. You've never had this happen to you as an American. We could all be speaking German right now. If Germany would have won World War II. You'd have to walk a mile in a man's shoe. What did he grow up with? What did he grow up in? We're going to find out. That Gideon was no doubt a confused human being. Judges 6:25. You know what I'm going to be getting at? Gideon's daddy. And it came to pass that same night that the Lord said unto him, Take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that thy father hath. What kind of house do you think he grew up in? A pagan home. But also, he knew the Word of God. He knew a little bit about the law of Moses. You'll see that if you'll read through that. So, no doubt this guy Gideon was confused. Daddy was a Baal worshiper. At the same time, he was an Israelite. He's got to be seeing the story of Moses. And now we've got Baal. Now we've got Moses. This is how he grew up. Think about it. Isn't that confusing? This or that. He says here, go and tear down your father's image of Baal. Cut down the grove that is by it. They would put these poles, they call them, I don't know what they call them, but sometimes you'll find poles over there nowadays. That would be the image or the thing that they would worship, and they'd have groves around it, real nice gardens, beautiful places, these worship places. Get in, go tear down, go get rid of all that. And build an altar unto the Lord thy God upon the top of this rock in the ordered place, and take of the second bullock and offer burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove, which thou shalt cut down. Oh, how about that? Y'all have mamas and daddies, don't you? Gideon, you go to your daddy's Baal, where he worships Baal, and you cut down his idol to Baal, and you tear down that garden. You mess up his pretty green garden that is built to honor that God. That special place, Gideon, that's your daddy's special place. That place where your daddy goes. That place where you watch your daddy no doubt do whatever your whole life. You go there and you tear all that down and you build me an altar on top of it. Who was Gideon? The angel of the Lord said, Thou mighty man of what? Valor. And put yourself in Gideon's shoes. I don't know about you. When I was, say, 30 years old, I was scared of no human being when I was young and healthy. What was it? What was I? 6'3". I was like that. I was a gnarly man, boy. I'd throw down with any human being, any 2 or 3. I don't care. 4. Bring it on, all of you at once. But let me tell you who I feared, who I tiptoed around, and I was very careful about what I said around. My daddy, he ain't here, so I guess I don't want to give him the big head. I'll brag, but he ain't here right now. So Gideon, you go tear down. You go destroy your father's way of worship. You go destroy that. What's he doing? He's down there like everybody else in Israel, hiding from the Midianites, because that's just the way of life. That's just the way he grew up. That's just all he knew. Down there threshing wheat, hiding it from the Midianites. The angel says, all right, thou mighty man of valor. And you don't think you ain't a mighty man of valor? Just read the whole chapter. So his daddy was a pagan worshiper. No doubt his daddy also taught him about Moses and the Dead Sea and the Red Sea crossings and the crossings of Jordan. And no doubt about all of the stuff that God did to bring children of Israel out of. So no doubt that he knew all that. Plus, he saw his daddy worshiping Baal, right? That's the community he grew up in. What kind of community do you grow up in? What kind of world do you grow up in? Do you see one thing, but you're like, wait a minute, that don't make sense? And then you're like, you grow up that way? That's the way Gideon grew up. He was down there threshing wheat like everybody else, hiding from the Midianites. Angel comes along. By the way, most agree, and I agree with them, that this is probably Jesus, God in the flesh. I forgot the name of what that is. This is God in the flesh came down here and was talking to almighty man of valor. His daddy was a pagan. Now, also in Judges chapter 6, verse 29 and 30, we read a little bit about Gideon's community. Verse 29. And they said one to another, who hath done this thing? You know what that's talking about? Tearing down that altar and tearing up that grave. Who did that? This is a community. And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, hath done this thing. Then the men of the city said unto Joash, bring out thy son, that he may die. We're going to kill him for what he did. Kill our God like that. Kill our God's garden. Kill our God's yard. Kill our God's little vineyard. We're going to kill him for what he did to our God. And this is where you're going to see where you're going to find out a little bit where Gideon was probably taught both. His daddy was the Baal worshiper, but he was also a worshiper of Jehovah. Both. He just tried to do both. So no doubt Gideon was a confused young man, didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to go to church. Didn't know what to believe. Man, I have heard that so much in my ministry from people. I just don't know what to believe. And that Sunday school teacher does this, and then he gets up there and teaches Sunday school. Well, you're confused. That's the world we live in. Bring your son out, that he may die, because he hath cast down the altar of Baal, and because he hath cut down the grove that was by it. The Bible says that Gideon took a crew of men out in the night and done that. I don't think Gideon was. I don't think they was poor. you go if you read the whole story, Gideon says, "I'm the least, and I'm blah blah, and my family blah blah blah." No, they had pretty influential family. He took a crew of men out there with him and tore all that down in the night. Men got up in the morning. Who done this? Gideon. Wonder why he didn't do it in the daytime? Because he was a coward? No, because he could get away with it. He'd have had trouble doing that in broad daylight. Whole town, daddy, community, it all would have been on him. So he went out there at night. In secret, just tore it all down. Got up the next morning. Where's your Baal? So now we know a little bit about Gideon. The angel said he was a man of honor. Valor. We find out his daddy, he was raised by the man who brought him into the world and raised him and taught him, was a Baal worshiper. And in Judges chapter 6, Gideon is going to need some reassurance. I wonder why. Well, look at the life he has been. Look how he was raised. Look what he has. But he didn't witness the walls of Jericho falling down. He didn't witness any of that. He didn't witness the parting of the Red Sea. He didn't witness any of that. All he's known his whole life is we got to keep the wheat out of the mouths of the Midianites. That's how he grew up. So he needs a little reassurance. Well, did God come talk to me or not? Second guessing himself. Look what I tore down the altars. I did all this, but was I dreaming? Now I'm starting to doubt myself. And then we find this little thing of the fleece. A fleece, that would be probably, just think of a coat made out of sheep wool. And one day he says, I'm not sure. I'm doubting. I'm having questions now. People, they have destroyed Gideon, them commentators, over this thing he done with his fleece. But I get a little bit angry. Self-righteous people, you didn't grow up like you don't know anything. You can't imagine what Gideon might have been going through hearing about Moses and then Baal saying it. And now this angel of the Lord comes and talks to him. And she's like, Lord, okay, I just need to be sure. I'm not sure. And what does he do? I'm going to put this fleece out tonight. And I want you to, when I get up in the morning, if there's dew on the fleece and not on the ground, I'll know. I think I'll know it's you. And then God did that. Dew on the fleece, but no dew anywhere else. He's like, you know what? Somebody could have. I don't know what he was thinking. That was a dumb test. Maybe if there was dew everywhere, but on the fleece, maybe I need to see that. So God says, all right, no problem. I see the grace of God working in the life of a confused human being. And here we are. We'll nail people real quick for not trusting Christ. What's wrong with you? We'll walk a mile in their shoes. I've heard people say that about certain people I know. What's wrong with that person? Well, guess what? I know a little bit about that person. Quite a bit. And I know, tell you right now, if you walked a mile in their shoe, you wouldn't even be standing there, singing. You wouldn't even be going to church right now if you walked a mile in that person's shoes. If you got treated how that person was treated their whole life, and you wonder what's wrong with them, maybe you ought to just give people a break, y'all. I think God's giving Gideon a break. He grew up Baal worship. What does Baal do? What is Baal? What do you find Baal doing in the Bible? What did he ever accomplish? Huh? That's all he knew. God comes along, no doubt Gideon heard the stories. If you'll go read the whole chapter, you'll see what I'm talking about. And Gideon's like, I need some reassurance here. There's nothing wrong with needing to be if you need a little reassurance, ask God. Are you faithless? No, that means you're just confused and you're not sure. God knows that. We're human beings. We're that way. And God gave him some reassurance. And then in Judges chapter 7, Gideon takes on the task. All right, we're going to go take on the Midianites. And he amasses a great gathering of people. That's just what a man would do in war, right? Get more on our, get a bunch of them over here, and then we'll go. And that's what he does. And God says, Gideon, I'm going to whittle down the army, and you'll find where God whittled down the army. God did it to 300 men. An army of 30,000 men whittled down to 300 men. And Gideon said, all right. And then that would be verses 1 through 8 and chapter 7. And chapter 7, 9 through 25, you find the destruction of the Midianites. Y'all remember the story of the 300, 100 over here, 100 over here, and 100 over here. And they all had these big clay pots and trumpets. And they blew the trumpets, broke the pots, and yelled. And the Midianite army, great Midian army, the Bible says, was like ants. I got this stump at my house. I walked out 2 or 3 times this week, looked at it, just covered in ants, just pop. That's the way the Midian that's how big the army was. Them 300 men just blew them trumpets, broke them jars, and yelled. And you know what the Bible says? Those guys went to killing each other. God did that. You'll find that God works in those kind of ways. Well, we think sometimes we got to do this and we got to do that, and if we do this and do this and do this, no. How about this? Maybe we should be like a Gideon and admit some things. I'm not sure. God, help me. I'm not sure. I'm confused. I hear one thing, see another. I've known that my whole life. I don't know any better. Maybe we ought to admit some things like that. We're just ignorant. God help. And let God help. God can do the work, can he not? Can God still work in mysterious ways? I mean, we don't go out and throw down with people, do we? That'd be easy, wouldn't it? Lucas, everybody get a gun and just go have a shootout. That'd be easy. We'll shoot all of them before they shoot all of us. We'll win. That's the way. No, it don't work that way. He took Gideon and 300 men. It did something weird. Got better wonder what them guys were thinking. Blowing them trumpets. Wonder what kind of conversations them 300 was having watching them Midianites kill each other out there. That's what you'll find in Judges chapter 7, 9 through 25, the destruction of those Midianites. And then Judges 8, 1 through 35, the whole chapter, the death of Gideon. Now Gideon did some strange things. But like I say, walk a mile in a man's shoes. Think, well, what was he thinking? You know what I can't find? And I looked. You don't find in that 330 years, you don't find much of anything about the law of Moses. Every man was doing right in his own eyes. So he was just doing whatever he thought was right. He just didn't know. And I imagine him being a human being, got a little bit of a big head after the great defeat of the Midianites through him and his 300-man army. So Gideon, he lived a good old age. He died. He had 70-something sons. That means he was a polygamist. Do y'all know what that is?